Chairman Mao, Jamie Howe, Ho Chi Minh, Asif Din, Václav Havel, Graham Saville, No Surrender, Percy Fender, Guerilla Cricket.
Good morning, good afternoon, good dawn, good dusk, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Guerilla Cricket Review of the Year, Part 2. And happy Christmas, or bar humbug, depending on your approach to the holiday season. But we're glad to have you along. It's been a hell of a year aboard the good ship Guerilla. We've infiltrated the TMS box at Lord's, commentated on 2 tied games in less than a month, and back in that heady late Irish spring, as you'll hear later, we've been an official test match broadcaster. In all, we've commentated on pretty much every test nation and 1 or 2 that aren't necessarily test nations. We've also been to Guerilla South Africa, who've come on board and covered South Africa and Zimbabwe as well, and more of that in the new year. Which other radio station has done 130 days of cricket broadcasting with all these different teams involved? I don't know. Anyway, I am Guerilla Hendo, Nigel Henderson, and joined for the second part of this look back over the last 12 months or so, I have the great wisdom that is Tony Bishop 1.
Hello, Hendo.
Hello there, how are you doing? And I have Tim Part, occasional Guerilla, and the guru of the Broken Wicket podcast, which you'll often hear the incredible loud tones of Ed Benson upon. It does sometimes happen. It's always a little bit worrying.
Does he use a microphone, or does he just
I don't think he needs to. I think
from about 20 feet, yes.
Okay.
Or even all the way from Toronto. But anyway, let's get underway. Let's talk about what's been going on in this wonderful cricket year that we've are just about to put behind us. And Tony, well, it started sort of, I guess, in May for you, didn't it? Really early May, when you got to speak to one of your great heroes as a Middlesex fan, one of the spearheads of the Irish attack. It was Tim Murtagh. Tell us about that.
Indeed, it was. I hunted him down actually in Sussex. So I drove to Sussex. I had to do it over 2 days, including a 3.5-hour traffic jam at Pease Pottage Services, courtesy of
got to be done, hasn't it?
Courtesy of a car boot sale that had decided to use the service station. He couldn't see me the first day, sadly, but he could the second day. So not only did I get to meet him, I got to meet John Snow, which was talking of bowling greats, and also have a beer with Jason Gillespie. So it was a very interesting evening.
Wow, you are dropping more names than Katie Walker used to.
I was hobnobbing, to be fair, but he was. Obviously, he was just starting to get fired up for it, and I remember one of the things he'd said was he really wanted to make his first ball something really special, and then in reality served up a floaty half volley.
Yes, I seem to remember that,
which was completely not what he had in mind. But he'd said a couple of other things as well. In 2000 he had bowled to Inzamam ul Haq.
Yeah.
And he said, well, wouldn't it be great to get his cousin? And lo and behold, he actually did as his first test wicket. So that was pretty special for him. But I think generally, one can talk about the Ireland experience, and I know we all have. But for me, I sort of felt, hunting a player down at a county game to talk about a forthcoming test match. On a personal level, that was a bit. I sort of felt like, well, I'm a proper reporter now.
It came late in the day for you, didn't it?
Stuff. This was absolutely the real thing.
Did you stand in the corridor and block his way?
Well, I didn't. No. But I had been quite persistent with him, and he was to his credit, he was utterly charming, and we had a really nice conversation in the cricketers' pub, and. He was open. He was forthcoming. He was massively excited. He told me all about how he'd come by way of Ireland and how Ed Joyce had kind of opened up the opportunity for him, and how it all went from there. And even then, just when we got to Ireland, I walk out on the pitch, and second morning, obviously we walked on the pitch with umbrellas for all the Thursday.
Well, yes, that's true.
And Tim Murtagh walked over and he went, "Hi Tony, how you doing?" And I wished him right. And
he remembered you.
Of course he did.
Hendo? From 4 days before?
What were you trying to say, Hendo?
I never expect anyone to remember me.
All of that, to be fair, just felt like it was it was an occasion that was special. It was a player who had a reason for it to be special, because let's be fair, he is in the twilight of a career at 36, or I think he may even be 37 now. Sorry, Tim, if you're listening.
I'm sure he is, because he'll know that you're on here, so he will be watching, won't he?
There was so much. Well, absolutely. He follows my every move. So there were so many reasons to make that special. For me, that Middlesex connection, and I think we might even have a jingle which doubles up the Middlesex connection, because it was my dream wicket, which was Bold Murtagh caught Sterling, and it happened.
Let's have a listen.
Tim Murtagh in once again over the wicket. This is it's been caught by Paul Sterling at first slip, and Pakistan are 2 for 1.
Wonderful memories, wonderful memories. Well, of course, that was memorable for you, not just for the interview with Tim Murtagh, but also being at Malahide. Tim, you weren't at Malahide, but one of your highlights of the year is the fact of Ireland getting Test status in the first place. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, obviously, it's great for Guerilla cricket, to get the rights and push us, further on. For me, it's more of a structural thing about cricket in an age when the World Cup is shrinking and it's harder to get in the fold. It's great that we're welcoming new nations into Test match cricket, and I think Afghanistan are set up to do pretty well. They've got lots of people who are naturalised citizens abroad, and they can rely on that. But Ireland, that's really good. It's a small nation, and perhaps for all the Irish diaspora, it's perhaps not the greatest cricketing diaspora in the world. So it'd be really interesting to see how they go.
But don't the Irish support their team at anything, anywhere?
Well,
don't
absolutely. They're everyone's favourite second team as well. So I just think it's a rare moment of unconstrained joy in the ICC doing something right for us.
Do you feel, though, I mean, just to sort of put a slightly sour note into the proceedings, the fact that they've only been offered a 4-day test at Lords against England next summer, does that stick in the craw a little bit?
Yes, it does a little bit. I think, obviously one of the things that cricket wrestles with on a regular basis is commercialism versus, being true to your roots. So while I think it would have been nice to get a 5-day, I think, but you don't want to sell them short and offer them 4 days necessarily, but you've got to do what's best for the game at the same time.
Yes, indeed. Well, we didn't see one of the great spin bowlers that we expected to see in that Test match because of injury. Yasir Shah, of course, was missing. Shadab Khan, of course, did play. But spin bowling is something that's really caught your eye this year, Tony, isn't it? As well, it's like had a renaissance, really.
I think it has, and that sort of came very much into focus for me clearly in the Sri Lanka Test when we had Rashid and we had Moeen Ali and we had, of course, Jack Leach, with the occasional spinner Joe Root, and the number of wickets that went to spin. And I'd felt that going over to Sri Lanka and fighting fire with fire and doing it so successfully, to me was really interesting in its own right. But then I noticed that this weekend there was a whole article by Simon Wilde in the Sunday Times, and he'd backed up what had been like a general feeling for me with some really interesting stats. So I think up until the weekend, 621 wickets have been taken in Test cricket to spin this year at a strike rate of just over 57. That may not mean anything until you think that's the best strike rate for spin bowling since 1922.
That's incredible.
That's a pretty
Since 19... So we're talking almost a century. We're talking almost a century.
That's a pretty impressive statistic. The average that they fell at was just over 29.7. That's the 4th best of all time. So I think there's a combination of things going on, and I think that teams, certainly, the old adage that if you travel away, you're going to get beaten and you'll win at home, and we win at home because we deploy our seam bowlers in overhead conditions on green tops.
Yes.
And India and Sri Lanka will win on their grounds because they're better adept at spin bowling. And it's not just England, you see. I think if you look at New Zealand recently and when they went to play in the UAE, there was Patel and Somerville, both of whom took wickets to help them win an away series against a team more traditionally deploying spin at home in more spin-friendly conditions and doing it successfully. So I think genuinely the feeling that, and probably the final thing is it's a joy to watch when it works. It's hard work for batsmen, but England found a way. They found a way of getting their feet forward. The use of the sweep shot and the reverse sweep shot, which we saw so much in Sri Lanka, was brought about by a need to find a way in difficult conditions.
Yeah.
So it made for a different pace of cricket.
Do you think, though, that perhaps the Sri Lankan spinners weren't as skilled as some of their predecessors? I mean, we had Harath in the first test. Dilrawan bowled extremely well. Would England be able to replicate that in India now with the spin lineup that they've got, Tim?
Yeah, I think they would actually. I think if you look at the way that analytics have come in, the way they prepare for tests, there's certainly, I know the ECB have these amazing iPads that are able to call up every single ball bowled by an international bowler over the last however many years. So I don't think it's for a lack of preparation. So I do believe that they can do it again. I think part of the surprise with Sri Lanka might have been that they've not played against them before, and to a certain extent, the Indian bowlers will be more familiar. So yeah, I'm actually quite positive about that.
I suppose one of the things that happened this season, and one of the that brought spin bowling back to the forefront of people's minds, was the fact that Adil Rashid, who'd lost his red ball contract, had gone to white ball only, suddenly gets called back into the test team based, I guess, around a fantastic ball that he bowled to Virat Kohli in one of the one-dayers and bowled him. And then later, I suppose, secured his place on the plane to Sri Lanka with another wonderful wicket when he got rid of KL Rahul at the Oval. Let's just have a listen to that.
Not so sure about Rahul. I mean, ideally England will let him have a single almost and have another go at Pant, I would think.
Would also be interesting to see how much more bounce or whatever he gets with the new ball.
Well, he's staying around the wicket to...
What a ball! Bowled him!
What a ball by Adil Rashid!
That was 1S.
That has flicked off Rahul's off bail after pitching about a foot and a half outside leg stump, and that could be the end of India's hopes of pulling off a magnificent victory. I didn't even give it enough credit. That is more than a foot. That is nearer 2 feet outside the leg stump. It has turned across him. He's played for it, and he cannot believe that it has just flicked the off bail. If you can now turn to me and say that Adil Rashid was not worthy of recall, he's done nothing in this test series. What a delivery that was. Rahul goes for 149. What an innings.
Yeah, it was a great innings by KL Rahul. Got 140 odd in that game, and India might have even cracked that if he'd kept going. So it was a crucial wicket at a crucial time from Adil Rashid. But we go back. I mean, earlier in that series, we talked about Lords, and Adil Rashid did nothing but sort of patrol around at long leg for most of the 5 days.
The Thanks for Coming award.
He did, basically,
First time
didn't
since
he?
Gareth Batty in 2005, I believe.
So do you think, I mean, I wonder if it's the role that luck plays sometimes, or just the thin margins that there are, that if he hadn't been brought back, there was all that controversy when Ed Smith announced him, wasn't there? I mean, lots of people were saying, he's not going to play for Yorkshire, mainly Yorkshire people, of course. Then he can't play for England, he's not going to play 4 or 5 day cricket. But in the end, he's come good. He hasn't always, ripped through teams, but he's proved his worth, hasn't he?
But I think there's a psychology involved there as well, because instead of having to be the sole leggy, but with all the pressure, then we know he's expensive. He can be expensive, but put him in a gang of 3, surround him with Moeen Ali, who's more wicket to wicket and quite floaty, and a craftsman who's actually learnt his spinning skills on a wicket more conducive perhaps to spin than other county wickets. All of a sudden he's part of an attack of 3. That takes some of the pressure off him, and I think being able to operate with that freedom, if you look at that Sri Lanka series, and to go back to your point about how Sri Lanka probably not as consistent, but you look at leading wicket taker for the series was Dilrawan Pereira. Akila Dhananjaya took a 5-foot, but he was also expensive.
And also lost his place because he had to go and have his action looked at.
Well, indeed, having taken 5 wickets
yes,
before
exactly.
he did. So
Extraordinary.
I'd be keen to see how that pans out. But I think 42% this year of all overs bowled in Test cricket were bowled by spin. I think that is massively good for the game because it brings a new challenge and a new dimension. And if you live in and watch a lot of your cricket in the UK, and you're used to watching games in April where no one plays spin bowlers because they just look up, they see the overcast conditions, they look down and they see a green wicket and they bring on the medium pace trundlers. It's a dimension of the game that needs nurturing and growing, and it has been. and that to me is just very exciting.
Yeah, it is. So, Tim, you were going to say something.
Yeah,
to
well,
that?
Adil Rashid is currently, I believe, the highest wicket taker across all 3 formats in international cricket this year. So he's obviously got the quality. I just wish that Joe Root would trust him a bit more.
Yeah, I
perhaps.
mean, it almost looked as if it had taken him till that final test in Sri Lanka before
Yeah.
Joe Root would actually put his arm around him and seemed to want to be in his company in a strange way.
Exactly. All right. It's a great story. I'm really glad. I always find myself rooting for him, not least because I've several times turned into a 900 wicket taker in an international cricket captain computer game, but only yes, not very realistic, obviously. It's a strange situation, but Ed Smith clearly has some stats in that man bag he carries around all the time. So who knows what's in there?
He's actually got
There's
James.
no way to talk about James
I was
Taylor.
going to say that's where. Absolutely, Ed Smith and his amusing sidekick. Now, one thing that Guerilla Cricket did for the first time this year was to commentate on the Asia Cup, which was held in the UAE. We hadn't done this before, but we had recently picked up good listenership through our link with Cricket Tracker in India. And we did, I think, the last 6 games of that tournament. And I think in the penultimate game, we saw India against Afghanistan. I don't think Afghanistan could actually get through at that point. But we saw a wonderful game, and we saw a wonderful innings from this man.
This isn't just another Afghan cricketer. All new Mohammad Shahzad, with class-leading power and a 3-ton towing capacity. There's never been so much innovation in a cricketer. Mohammad Shahzad gets the tough jobs done.
He does indeed. He's got a wonderful 100 in that game. And of course, I suppose people like him because he doesn't look like a cricketer. He's got a bit of a tummy, like all of us, or most of us. Well,
No,
you
all
and
of
me.
us,
Maybe not so much Tim, but...
No, dad bod,
definitely.
dad bod here,
You're
don't
doing it. You're hiding it well. But that was an interesting tournament for us to do, and it was something that was another highlight of your year, Tony.
It was a highlight of my year because the number of listeners, not always about volume, I realise that, but I think we tipped 1 million listeners during that competition, and that in itself was just phenomenal. Just to realize you can become very insular in life, can't you? You know, you can see the inside of a studio in Sydenham, or you can just think about England. But to realise that we were out there talking to so many people who were so engaged and so interactive with us, albeit in quite short ways sometimes.
Yes.
That to me counted for a lot. And I think the quality of the cricket also did justice to that fact as well. So it was a surprise in some ways for us to do it, and yet we got that massive listenership. And if you look at that tournament, there was, of course, the Tide match between Ireland and India and Afghanistan. There was a phenomenal final where Bangladesh had it in their grasp and then somehow seemed to implode and just couldn't quite get over the line, could they? I mean, honourable mentions, I think, for Hong Kong even, who ran India close enough.
Oh, in the first game they played, I think,
absolutely.
in the tournament, yeah.
And, you know, and Pakistan, who won a couple but didn't quite get through.
I suppose
probably only Sri Lanka is the one where you go, oh dear, why bother? But generally, as a tournament, I thought it was terrific. For us, it was more than terrific because it gave us so many listeners, and the quality of cricket was fantastic.
And it was a reasonable hour of the day. Most importantly, I think we have to say that. That was certainly what got it on my side.
Well, we started the year doing all-nighters, didn't we? So
We did. Well, you know, as I say, my body clock is completely gone and will probably never be found again. But it was a fine tournament in the end. We were looking for that really great game, and I think we got it in those last 2, really, in the Afghanistan-India game and the Bangladesh final. So yes, it was, and it is kind of gratifying to know that there are more people out there listening to you and interacting with you, which is, you know, from our point of view, as a Guerilla point of view, it's a great thing.
We're all together for this common binding single principle: we love cricket.
The cricket crowd.
We
We're talking about.
crowd,
An enormous
but,
crowd, but, well, in many different ways.
1 million odd is enormous.
Pretty
enough. I don't know
big
how many
crowd.
close friends you've got, Hendo, but I can't quite invite 1 million round.
No, it's a decent size. It's a decent
It's
size.
a decent size.
Anyway, moving on to one or two of Tim's choices for this season, and I suppose it's kind of inevitable. We talked in the first of these chats about Alistair Cook and his 100 and his final appearance, record making in one sense, but another record breaker or record maker we had was this man.
Into bowl to Shammy in bowls, and he's knocked him over. I win the money. Anderson is the most successful seam bowler in the history of the world. Hendo's got his wish.
Yeah, the 564th wicket for Jimmy Anderson. What a moment that was.
Absolutely. So, look, it was a toss-up for me between this and Cook, but I chose Jimmy for two reasons. I mean, they come as a pair, really. That's a bog-off, a buy-one, get-one free choice, this. I mean, neither could have done what they have achieved in cricket without the other one being present, I would argue. For Cook's final test, it was a nice send-off, but I think Jimmy's trumped it for me by being, a moment of achieving true greatness, where Alistair Cook had, probably achieved that already. So that's one reason. There's two other reasons. One, I think Jimmy's been vastly underappreciated throughout his career. Although the Australians give him the terrible nickname of underrated, and it's so bad it's not even funny, that nickname. But I think that just shows how much they deep down fear him. And he's had a difficult start to Test cricket. He was in and out. But he's and on a personal note, this is the third reason. He's only a couple of months younger than I am. So I've tracked my adult life via cricket throughout his progression.
Okay.
And from these uncertain beginnings, he's become the greatest, the highest wicket-taking Test bowler in the world. You get the sense that McGrath and Murali were sort of inevitable in terms of their milestones. But I get the sense that Anderson's really had to work at it. There's always been that scintilla of doubt, and he's had to really put in the hard yards. He's had some terrible haircuts as well. In the days when I had hair, I had some pretty bad haircuts.
Did your haircuts follow the same path as Jimmy Anderson's then? Is that what you're saying?
There was a lot of product early on in the. No, I've never gone the full thing, but I have dyed it various things.
Mohican or nothing like that?
No, there were lots of barnets.
Okay.
But my hair quit. I didn't go bald. My hair quit. I'm full of admiration for him, and I think he's had to work really hard at it and constantly battle the doubters.
As a sense that there's admiration for his longevity in a way.
Absolutely. I mean, it's hard to go on this long, especially as a bowler, for the stresses you put through your body. And in a game where you're now, he's not playing 3 formats, but it's harder and harder to last as long as you do when fitness levels are going up and you're assessed on fielding as well. He's a great fielder, but I'm just full of admiration for him and very delighted when he achieved the milestone.
Yeah, and I mean, I certainly think amongst swing bowlers, he's got to be up there among the best, hasn't he? I mean, you wouldn't take someone like Glenn McGrath as a swing bowler. He's more of a seam and constantly on the mark, isn't
exactly. I admire his craftsmanship as well. It's more than just a boring off stump all the time. He really is a master of his art, and he sort of combines this hard graft and this artistry at the same time.
I wonder whether you feel that he's now picking up wickets that he was due earlier in his career. Do you think that's the case?
He's certainly more adaptable, I think, and even for. Sri Lanka's probably a bad example because he took 1 wicket, I think, for 115 or something, having
holiday
glorified spin. But he's also found a way to bowl on tougher wickets that are less conducive to spin bowling. So just to say he's a swing bowler is too narrow. He has all the tricks up his sleeve and the ability to move the ball off the pitch and vary his pace and. Yeah, and even in Australia, I mean, he managed to get himself some wickets at not overly expensive rates, as I recall. So, there's more to him than just swinging.
Do you think he's one of those people who will struggle without cricket? I mean, I'm wondering how long he can go on. Obviously, he's not going to be playing in the World Cup, but you look ahead to the Ashes. Obviously, that's got to be an enormous target for him. But beyond that, I think England go to New Zealand and South Africa next winter. Do you think he's going to go? Do you think the Ashes could be his swan song?
Tim, do you want to take that?
Potentially. I mean, part of it is a lot of people retire when they see someone coming through. Take Nasser after running Strauss out.
Yes.
You thought, okay, actually, this is a bit rubbish. I probably better retire. So, does Jimmy? He's the ultimate team player. I think. Does he want to done a lot of the bowling that a lot of the other great bowlers wouldn't have done over the years? So I think if he sees someone knocking at the door, he'll gracefully step aside. But I don't really see anyone doing that for England currently.
Curran, perhaps? Sam Curran?
Yeah. I think I think that it's kind of an apprentice thing.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll see that through and then get all Star Wars and Jedi and pass some lightsabers along or something. I don't think he'll struggle without cricket. I mean, I think he's. I don't know whether he'd go into media or something.
I think
else.
he will.
I think he's already feathering that nest.
He's definitely, and he's actually quite good, I think.
He does. Yeah, him and Swan did all the social media stuff on tour. I think that was his main job in Sri Lanka, wasn't it? Rather than actually playing any cricket, so, chief cricket communications officer. But I think he'll do fine. He seems a fairly level-headed guy.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Your final choice of the year is again a little bit left field, a little bit offbeat. It's just an instant, and there must have been many incidents and instances in the IPL that you could pick out, but you've picked out one in particular. I would like to say that we were going to play the jingle for this man, but unfortunately it hasn't been loaded to the cart. We've failed to do that. But tell us about this moment and why it was significant for you.
So this is Trent Bolt's amazing catch for Delhi Daredevils when they're playing in the 19th match, apparently.
19th?
The 19th.
Fantastic memory.
The 19th match on April the 21st, 2018. Note it in your diaries, listeners. He did an outstanding catch to get Virat Kohli out. So I was commentating on this at the time, and as someone who's been new to Guerilla over the past year, it really is the standout moment for me personally in terms of commentating. It's just so unexpected. I think it says more about the way cricket's going at the moment. For it to expand its boundaries, it's got to have these kind of, for want of a better word, viral moments that can travel the world in a minute. It was just astounding. For if listeners don't remember what it was, Harshal Patel bowled a rank, disgusting leg side full toss on the knee pads. Virat, whipped it away as is his wont, imperiously, only to find Trent Bolt, who'd initially gone the wrong way to his left on the boundary at about square leg, come back to the right, leap up one-handed, take it behind himself, pirouette in the air, land close to the boundary, and prop himself up like some kind of yoga housewife over the boundary so he didn't touch it, and stood up, just held the ball aloft, and in his little small mouth did a lovely
I was going to say, it wouldn't be a broad smile, would it? Because there's only a tiny little mouth.
Thankfully he's got bigger hands than he does mouth, so
Yes.
he could catch it. But it just in terms of the sheer athleticism, and I find it hard to follow IPL best times. I love watching it, I love commentating on it, but I can't physically get the capacity in my brain to track what's going on 2 games a day, day to day.
It is hard, isn't it? I totally agree with you. That is probably one of the problems that I have with all T20 cricket to a certain extent.
As an anchoring point for me, as a commentating point, and just as showing how important, how cricket's evolving to be this even more elite sport, and that's what's going to make it a success around the world. It's this kind of thing that we want to see more of.
Excellent. Well, thank you to you guys for being with me here today, giving me your looking back at the what's happened in this incredibly packed year that we've had, hasn't it?
Bloody busy.
It has been.
Yeah.
It's we seem to have been in this little room a lot,
We've also been out to play.
We've been out once or twice. We've been allowed out for good behaviour, haven't we?
have been.
Just once or twice it's happened, and it's been quite nice to do. I should remind you that at the end of this broadcast, you will find another contribution from one of our commentators, stroke tweeters. Chris 1209 has kindly sent us 2 minutes of his wisdom that you will see. But until we meet again for the third part of the Guerilla Cricket review of the third part, would you believe it? It's incredible. It's goodbye from Tim, and it's goodbye from Tony.
Goodbye and thank
Goodbye.
you.
Thank you very much.
And remember, a gorilla is not just for Christmas, it's for life.
Hello, everyone. It's been a bit of a funny year of Test cricket. Everything's happened. Not much has happened. England are England. Australia are funny. India are quite good. Virat Kohli's very good. New Zealand have more or less not existed. Bangladesh have won 2 games by an innings in the last few months, but basically been Bangladesh. A lot's happened, but nothing's changed except praise the cricketing gods. Australia Australia have just imploded. Just as a nation, as a team, as a setup, they've started writing things like elite sportsmanship, elite matesmanship, elite nonsense. Australia are bad, and it's hilarious, and they don't have their best players because of a moral panic that they made up themselves, of their own making, of their own media's blowing out of proportion. It's been delightful. Australians cry and cry and cry. I'll see you back in Guerilla Cricket soon.
Guerilla Cricket.
Revolutionary cricket commentary.